Good evening, Dumelang. Let me take this opportunity to greet you all in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And let me thank Prof Lebo and the family for giving me the opportunity to open this ceremony with a prayer. And let's read from Genesis chapter 12, verse 2 and 3. I will give you many descendants, and they will become a great nation. I will bless you and make your name famous, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but I will curse those who curse you. And through you I will bless all the nations. This is the word of the Lord. Ka Setswana mo go Genese kgalo ya 12, temana ya 2 le ya 3. Ke tla go dira setšhaba se segolo, ke tla go tshegofatsa. Ke tumisa leina la gago, gore o ne tshegofatso. Ke tla tshegofatsa ba ba go tshegofatsang, ke hutsa ba ba go hutsang. Ditshika tsotlhe tsa lefatshe di tla tshegofadiwa ka wena. Se ke lefoko la Modimo, dilo tsotlhe di tla fela, mme lefoko la Modimo le tla ntse le le teng. This evening, God is making a promise to you, Prof Lebo. He will bless you, and He will make your name famous. And when you are famous, continue to humble yourself. Because when you humble yourself, He will raise you up. You will be a blessing to other people, to your mentees, to your mentors, to the Northwest University and our Faculty of Health Sciences. Through you, Prof Lebo, you will be a blessing to other people. Let us bow our heads and pray. God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for blessing us. We gather this evening in a spirit of gratitude to celebrate Lebo's inaugural lecture. We ask for your blessing on this ceremony. Lord, thank you for guiding her, and ask for courage, wisdom, and perseverance as she begins a new chapter as a full professor. We also thank the Northwest University, Faculty of Health Sciences, management, her mentors, mentees, family, husband, and children for their support. All this we ask in Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Avi Kotze, Executive Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, and it's an honor to do the welcoming at this inauguration ceremony of Prof Lebo Gafane Matemane from the Hypertension in Africa research team in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the Northwest University. This is really a special occasion for our full professor, so I hope you will all enjoy it with us. A special word of welcome to Prof Linda du Plessis, our Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning, and also the Vice Principal of the University, which is our main functionary this evening. Dit is regtig 'n voorreg, Prof Linda, om jou hier te hê, en ons waardeer opreg altyd jou ondersteuning, jou vriendskap, jou leierskap, en dat jy voorloop met dit wat in die onderrigomgewing gebeur. Dit is vir ons regtig 'n riem onder die hart, en veral dan jou vriendskap. Welcome also to Prof Lepile Seularo, Research Director of Lifestyle Diseases in the Faculty of Northwest University, who has opened the ceremony with scripture reading and prayer, and who will also close this ceremony. I also welcome members of the Faculty Management Committee of the Faculty of Health Sciences, and in particular Prof Marius Smits, our Acting Deputy Dean Research and Innovation in the faculty. And from tomorrow there's a new person in charge, but he will still be available as our new person is still in the US. Prof Jan Steenekamp, Prof Usa, is he here? No, he's not here. Prof Alida specifically, our person of the deanery, has asked that I tender her apologies as she's with a large delegation of the faculty at the SAHI conference. Then welcome to Prof Jan Steenekamp, School Director of the School of Pharmacy, Prof Tersha van Zyl, our new School Director of the School of Applied Health Sciences in the faculty, that is closely related to HART, the entity, research entity, Dr. Rory Songmachailu, Deputy Director of the School of Nursing in the faculty on the Mahikeng campus, Prof Marlene Pieters, Research Director of the Center for Excellence for Nutrition in the faculty, Prof Karina Mels, who's a Research Director of the Center for Excellence for Hypertension in Africa research team, and this is the entity in which Prof Lebo is conducting research. Prof Petra Bester, Director of the Africa Unit for Transdisciplinary Health Research in the faculty. Prof Andries Onyeki, Research Director of Physical Activity, Sport and Recreation. Prof Elma Libbe, Research Director in Quality in Nursing and Midwifery in the faculty. And then Prof Wayne Towers, Head of the Health Sciences Ethics Office for Research, Training and Support. A special word of welcome to staff members of the Hypertension in Africa research team, as I mentioned, the center in which Prof Lebo work, and all her colleagues and collaborators. Also a word of welcome to our current postgraduate students and postdoctoral fellows which are present tonight. Welcome to other staff members of the university and guests who will follow the ceremony by means of virtual access. A special word of welcome also to Prof Hugo Huisman and his wife. Prof Hugo was the previous director in HART, the entity in which Lebo grew up, and who came all the way from Mpumalanga to enjoy this evening with us. A special word of welcome also to her husband, a nearby family, Tsepu Matemane, children Katlego, Tukolo, Malaika, and Joshua Matemane. Where are they sitting, Lebo? There they are. I just want to make sure they are all here. Did mommy and daddy buy you new clothes? They said yes. They were coached by mother. If they don't, you had to get something to play tomorrow. And that's on the account of your father. Her parents, Mudibi and Filia Gafane, her brother, Marimecha Jacob Gafane, her uncle Albert Masenya, all the way from Polokwane in Limpopo, and her in-laws, Miss Celestina Matemane, Miss Gratio Muamani, and his wife, all the way from Tsanin in Limpopo. We are really honored that we have so many guests that have traveled so far to enjoy this special evening with Lebo. And then her friend, Ishweni Ignatius Masikuameng from Segatani. That's a special friend and brother from primary school days. Dr. Cynthia Rametsua, working in our faculty, which has a close relationship also with Lebo. Mrs. Siwe Tekisu and Mrs. Elizabeth van der Merwe, who are not only her friends, but also family here in Potchefstroom, through good and through bad times. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our special guest of the evening, Prof Lebo Gafane Matemane, and I request that she joins me for introducing her. Photographers indicate this side is fine. Make sure she gets some nice pictures. Lebo Francina Gafane Matemane, the daughter of Marmashela and Mudibi Gafane, was born on the 4th of July 1989 in Gamoleki, Limpopo province. Now when I see 4th of July, I was thinking of the USA, but luckily not. South African. She is married to Tsepu Washwa Matemane and blessed with 3 sons and 1 daughter. Lebo grew up in Moleki, Segatani, and matriculated with distinction from Matla Lasane High School, Gamashwane, Doornspruit in 2007. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Molecular and Life Sciences at the University of Limpopo in 2010 and was awarded the Industrial Development Corporation or IDC Award for the Best Student in Physiology. She obtained her honours degree, Physiology with distinction in 2012 at the same University, Limpopo, and her Master's degree, MSc in Physiology, also with distinction in 2014 at Northwest University here on the Potchefstroom campus. She obtained her PhD degree in Cardiovascular Physiology at Northwest University in 2007, also in art. Her additional qualifications include a postgraduate diploma in research supervision from the University of Johannesburg and a certificate in the fundamentals of global health from the University Medical Center Utrecht in the Netherlands. She worked as a temporary junior lecturer at the University of Limpopo in 2012, a research assistant at the Hypertension in Africa research team in 2014, and a permanent employee at Northwest University and in the faculty since 2015. 4 years later, she received the Northwest University Emerging Teaching Excellence Award. Currently, she is a sub-theme leader for translational and implementation research within HEART and a community engagement champion in the Faculty of Health Sciences. She is an honorary researcher at the University of the Witwatersrand in the School of Clinical Medicine and was previously an honorary senior research fellow at the University of Johannesburg also in the Faculty of Health Sciences there. Her research focused on the kidney and hypertension, starting during her doctoral studies under the supervision of Professors Alta Schutte, Rudolf Schutte, and Johannes van Rooyen. Her thesis titled A Cardiovascular Profile of a Low Renin Phenotype in Black South African Populations was the beginning of a curious journey into the complexities of cardiorenal health in African populations, which has culminated in the formation of a cardiorenal health research initiative at HEART in the faculty. Her work focuses on hypertension and heart-kidney connections, using translational and implementation science to improve prevention, early detection, and care pathways. She has produced more than 80 publications and delivered more than 40 national and international conference presentations, including the Jack Brock Lecture at the Department of Medicine, the University of Cape Town. She has supervised or co-supervised to completion 4 PhD, 12 Masters and 10 Honour students. She currently supervises 7 PhDs, 2 Masters and 1 Honour student, and mentors 2 postdoctoral fellows and a visiting scholar through the African Research Excellence Fund Research Development Fellowship. A champion for mentorship, Lebo has mentored several early career researchers through various initiatives, including the Faculty of Health Sciences Research Mentorship Program, the Northwest University Academic Mentorship Program, and the International Society of Hypertension, amongst others. She has given lectures to the Masters of Public Health students at the University of Witwatersrand and the University of Pretoria. One of her career-defining moments is a successful nomination by Northwest University for the Department of Higher Education and Training Future Professors Program Phase 1, through which she built and strengthened collaborations with various institutions, including the University of Melbourne, the University of Western Australia, the George Institute of Global Health, and the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. She is a fellow of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science under the Hope Fellowship, which was received at the 14th Hope meeting with Nobel laureates in March 2023 in Tsubaka City, Japan. In 2020, she became one of the 4 researchers from Africa honored with the International Society of Hypertension Fellowship Award, a symbol of excellence which recognizes and honors members of a society who have distinguished themselves through excellence in clinical practice or research in the field of hypertension. Recognition for her work includes, amongst others, the Platinum Award for the Best Presentation at the Joint Stroke and Hypertension Congress in 2016, Clinical Science Journal Young Investigator Award in 2018, Inspiring 50 South Africans in 2020, the South African Medical Research Council Bronze Scientific Merit Award in 2023, and the National Research Foundation Emerging Researcher Award in 2025. Lebo is a principal investigator of a coma essay study, a multi-component community-based approach to management and hypertension in South Africa, funded by the NRF and the Medical Research Council. She held an NRF Y2 rating, valid from 2022. She has been in the top 3 most productive emerging researchers in the Faculty of Health Sciences from 2021 to 2024, being the winner in 2022 and 2024. In addition to her scientific excellence, Lebo serves in various leadership positions to advance her discipline and build the next generation of academics. She was successfully nominated by the Northwest University for the Higher Education Leadership and Management, or HELM program, in 2025-2026. That's Women in Leadership program, implemented by universities South Africa or New South. Her leadership roles include chair of a mentorship and training committee of the International Society of Hypertension, a board member of the Southern African Society of Hypertension and the Childhood Hypertension Consortium of Africa, and she's secretary of the Physiology Society of Southern Africa and the South African National Committee for the International Union for Physiological Sciences. She served on the editorial boards of the Journal of Hypertension, Journal of the American Heart Association, and Comprehensive Physiology, as well as a Global Alliance for Chronic Diseases Working Group on Equity and Implementation Research. She chairs the Scientific Committee of the Southern African Hypertension Society Biannual Conference of 2026, themed A Life Course Perspective on Hypertension, which aims to highlight the importance of early prevention, while showcasing research on emerging technologies and evolving therapies, shaping the future of patient care. Lebo is currently involved in various global and regional initiatives, too many to name, aimed at deepening the understanding of hypertension and kidney disease development to inform contextualized and sustainable interventions. Dear colleagues, friends, you will all agree that this is truly a very remarkable academic record for such a young person and an excellent achievement. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to hand over the academic ware to Prof Lebo Gafane Matemane and invite her to deliver her inaugural lecture with the title When Biology Meets Context, RAAS, Hypertension and the Future of Cardiorenal Health in Africa. Congratulations from my side, Lebo, and enjoy this presentation. Lost that. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Avi, for the kind and generous introduction. And thank you, Prof. Lebile for the word and prayer. I would like to start by acknowledging the leadership of the Northwest University, starting with the Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor Teaching and Learning, Prof. Linda du Plessis, the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, Prof. Abikote, the Acting Deputy Dean of Research and Innovation in the Faculty of Health Sciences, Prof. Maria Smith, and in their absence, Deputy Dean for Community Engagement and Stakeholder Relations, Prof. Efe Use, and the Deputy Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Health Sciences, Prof. Alida Herbst. I would also like to acknowledge all the directors of the schools and entities within the Faculty of Health Sciences today, including my director, Prof. Karina Mels, and my previous director, Prof. Yichel Heisman, who is also here today. My colleagues, postgraduate students, and postdoctoral fellows, my dear family and friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today is a very special day, and I'm standing here almost forgotten about my talk, my science, and my papers, but just taking in this current moment, which I'm very grateful for. When I look at my family, when I look at my colleagues, everyone who is here, when I reflect on my personal journey, my academic journey, and every single moment that has brought me to this one, I am very grateful for that. So in my talk, I will bring in this journey which started from curiosity, really. I remember when I started my BSc during the first year, we did many subjects, and I was very good and enjoyed physics, especially the electricity. Because of the connections, how the connections work. And in my second year, it was the first time that I actually did physiology. And I was just fascinated by the similarities between the electrical circuits and how the body functions, how everything is connected. And if there is a dysfunction in one part of the body, it can actually cause problems to other parts of the body that can lead to disease development, and if nothing is done about it, even to death. So my curiosity, and I always wanted to understand how, why, and then how can you stop the disease at this part. And I think when I did, I enrolled for my PhD, and I had to do something that included not only the way the body works, but also some historical components to the work, the adaptation of the human body over centuries from generation to generation. That just opened my mind to a whole lot of complexity, which at every step I always wanted to make sense of. So I will start with salt handling and hypertension phenotypes in African populations, which I've been working on for over 10 years now, a journey of 100 years indeed, but not my 100 years, the generation before me, those that came before us, that's where it started. And then how that actually led me to being passionate about community engagement and realizing that actually that community engagement component, is the part of the puzzle that I was struggling to bring into my scientific work. And to end it off with how I believe using science, even the basic form of science, how we can use that to actually achieve societal impact. So the question is always why the kidneys? There are many organs in the body, there are many diseases. And if you think of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, there is no beginning, there's no end. It's just a lot. So why this specific focus on the kidneys, this beautiful organ with the adrenal gland at the top? So this is because for many years, for a very long time, hypertension, even before it was named hypertension, has always been a main cause of kidney disease. And what attracted me the most and kept me going on these research questions is the fact that African populations usually present with severe hypertension and kidney disease at young ages. And this is the work that was done in earlier days in African Americans. And in addition to that, the kidneys, other than being associated with disease, actually play a critical role in the regulation of blood pressure. And not only blood pressure itself, but salts, all the other metabolic functions that are ongoing in our bodies at every second millisecond. The kidneys are involved in keeping that balance so that we're able to survive. And because of that, certain things that happen within the kidney are our kidney function or systems within the kidneys is the cornerstone of antihypertensive medication. So most of the medication that is being used in the world, in South Africa, everywhere, that is aimed at controlling blood pressure, those medications, they target the kidney, because targeting those processes that happen in the kidney are well known to result in reduced lower blood pressure, and therefore protecting key organs, including the kidney itself, from disease and later on failure. And that is where actually my research focus is, that level, which is a system known as the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. That is the system that keeps us alive. It keeps our blood pressure, the salts that we take in balance, and continues to be a very important topic in cardiovascular research because of the potential to improve not only cardiovascular health outcomes, but health outcomes in general. And I think, if I think of the times that we are living now, most importantly also is the fact that the kidney is not functioning, or when there's issues, it's not in isolation. We are looking at the renal metabolic syndrome, where now metabolism, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, they are occurring in people at the same time. I myself can name a few people, family members, neighbors, people that I know that don't only have hypertension, but they have hypertension and type 2 diabetes, or they have heart failure and something else. So that is why then our view of the kidney as that key organ that keeps us alive and we target with medicine is not only important at that level, but at our overall health level. And just to then go back to that journey that began hundreds of years ago, we can focus on the black and white figure there on the right, on my right. And what we see there being depicted is a slave trader apparently licking the face of a captured African to test if the salt content of this potential slave is high or low. And the reason they are doing that tasting is because at that time it was suggested that individuals with lower salt content will perish during that forced migration, the Middle Passage, which is on the global map indicated in green, where Africans were taken from the west coast of Africa through the Atlantic Ocean to the New World in the Americas to work at the plantations. So that was a very, I have no ways to describe that whole trip, or from the coast to the other one. So to survive that, the disease, just everything that was combined, there was something that they looked for, because a lot of people were not making it. And according to the slave trader, that was a loss, they were losing a lot of money by not being able to keep their cargo alive until they get to the other side. So they were looking for ways to make sure that they get those that will be able to survive the trip, and also when they get there, adapt and be able to work in the plantations. So, so individuals with high salt content were slaves, so they started selecting instead of taking everyone, and just doing a simple thing, licking, and oh, you are very salty, then you are going. And so it's how things were at that time. But when I was actually finalizing my PhD, because this is where I started to struggle to reconcile science and this kind of a historical context, and why at the year that I was doing my PhD, we are still referring to science in that way. Because it needed to make sense to me, for me to say, okay, I understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And that is why I ended up finding this kind of work. So from those early records, it was then hypothesized now the slaves, they've been in the US, and there's generations that are now born and living there. And what they observe is that usually those, the African Americans presented with hypertension that was very severe, and kidney damage that was very severe for their age. And while trying to look for solutions, they came up with what we refer to now as the slavery hypothesis. The slavery hypothesis was asking this question: could an exaggerated hypertensive response in a response to salt be related, for example, to selective effects in enslaved Africans, such that those that survived the Middle Passage or had high salt content according to the tests that were done, the leaking, and survived in the plantations, the living and the working conditions and the environmental conditions, was that kind of adaptation, although it was protective at that time, could it have did it have the potential to make their offspring, even not generations to come, could that ability cause their offspring to then be vulnerable or predisposed to this early presentation of kidney disease and hypertension, especially through the exaggerated response to salt? So the exaggerated response to salt, it is actually the scientific term, salt sensitivity. So when you have salt-sensitive hypertension, or your blood pressure is sensitive to salt, it means when you increase your salt intake, your blood pressure will go up. When you decrease your salt intake, your blood pressure will go down. That's how simple it is. And that's what they also thought could be one of the reasons Africans presented with that kind of hypertension and kidney damage, this salt sensitivity issue. But for many reasons, that slavery hypothesis was criticized. But that did not stop it from being used. That's why today I'm still talking about salt sensitivity in populations of African ancestry. Because despite the many wrong things that led to the slavery hypothesis, in a clinical settings, when doctors were seeing patients, they could still see those differences. And they just could not understand what they were, what was the reason. And then they started throwing terms around like the African gene, the African body, but not necessarily understanding what is the core issue with regards to this. So there were many limitations to the slavery hypothesis, including the fact that those hypotheses were actually never assessed the way that we assess research now. It was mostly conference reports, abstracts that did not go through peer review. There was no histological and anthropological data to support that, because they also thought that salt sensitivity is due to the fact that there was not enough salt in Africa. But historical and other data proved that to not be correct. So there were many flaws also with the measurements that they were using at that time to test for salt sensitivity. And I think the most important point for me was that even though there could be that genetic mutation in those Africans that made them to be so sensitive or predisposed to early hypertension and kidney disease, it will still not be enough by itself to cause that kind of severity with hypertension and kidney damage. Other factors would contribute to that. And other issues were the exaggeration and generalization. All Africans have salt-sensitive hypertension. All Africans have this exaggerated response. And this was proven by studies that showed that actually, if they compared Americans of European descent with those of African descent, their differences in terms of cell sensitivity were not as huge as they were hypothesizing. And they also didn't take into consideration that through the passage itself and starting to live there were a lot of infectious diseases, and that could have also impacted the genetic diversity or the mutation. So such important factors, which now we refer to as social determinants of health, were never taken into consideration. It was just about the African gene and the African body. So While I was reading that, I then came back home to the African continent, and I looked at the Bantu expansion, the migration from West Africa down, with interacting with the indigenous people then of South Africa. As you can see, sorry, not of South Africa, of Africa. If you see in the middle of the southern going down to South Africa, you see there in gray the Khoisan homeland. That during what happened during the Bantu migration, obviously, as we know, human nature, there were interactions between these different populations. And due to those interactions, there was also exchange in terms of genetic diversity. So what happened is that Prof Brian Reina's team and Prof Erica Jones, whom now we work closely with, investigated this African gene on the African continent, because they also wanted to see, is that relatable to what is being seen in African Americans? And what they found then is that there is some genetic mutation in the kidney, in the channel that actually transports sodium. So when the kidneys are busy working to balance that sodium, the sodium is moving with channels. So there was a genetic variant in those channels that actually was associated with hypertension in urban South Africans. So there is some genetic link there. And based on what they found, they suggested that the origin of that gene was the San population. However, it was not associated with hypertension in the San people, possibly due to their low salt intake, because now when we look at urban areas, the lifestyle, what we eat, the unhealthy diet, the chips, the bakers, a lot. If we had that gene which was supposed to protect us from dying, to help us survive in dry climates, in low salt intake environments, now we are indulging, we are overloading our bodies, and it's becoming detrimental to us, whereas in many generations ago it was supposed to protect us. That is what is happening there. So now I came up to this understanding that, okay, this low renin phenotype that is there, and you cannot argue about it, whether you use this hypothesis or that hypothesis, it's there. You see the data. It's due to salt sensitivity, some of it, aldosterone excess, and sympathetic drive. So that was work already done by other people. And what I wanted to do was just to zoom in into that low renin phenotype. And when I zoomed in, I focused on the clinical application of it, which says that in populations of European descent, you have hypertension that is characterized by the RAAS system being high, renin and angiotensin 2. And that's why traditionally they would receive ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers to treat hypertension, and it worked. Whereas the early studies that were done in populations of African ancestry or African Americans found that they did not respond well to when you block the RAAS system like their European counterparts, but rather they responded better to calcium channel blockers and diuretics because of the sodium and water component of hypertension. Because when sodium is retained, you also retain water. That is the balance. And now, what actually is very interesting is that recent data, which comes from the Creole trial, done in various locations in Africa, have shown that even Africans, some respond to the ACE inhibitor. They benefit from the same ACE inhibitor that someone of European descent can benefit from, in combination with the medicines that were already known to work. So that is why we need to have data from Africa, because we will spend hundreds of years treating people because they are of this ancestry, they are of this ethnicity or this race, so they take this medicine because from 100 years ago it was shown that they don't respond to this one. But with a lot has happened in that 100 years. How are people's bodies now? What is their likely response to medication now? And that is why the question around RAAS will always come up as new areas of research to try and understand the development of hypertension. So in my thesis, I already knew that most of the things were discovered before. And now I want to focus on the cardiovascular impact of the low renin low RAAS activity. And the thing that I remember, I used to have these discussions with my supervisors, especially Prof Alta, but it's low. How can it cause harm if it's low? It means that the low levels or the suppression could be in response to something else, not necessarily the cause of the damage. Because physiologically we know that renin activates angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 causes inflammation, vasoconstriction, and oxidative stress, a whole lot of things that actually causes damage. So if populations of African ancestry have low renin, how can we say it's detrimental if it's not the one that is causing the damage? So then I also always had this in the background of my mind, the slavery hypothesis, which has had a lot of criticism, including myself. Because I just could not believe some of the things were scientific or relevant, especially if when we look at race as a social construct and not a biological variable. So I always wonder then, if we are going to do this research, will ethnicity have an impact on the findings? And if it does, what does it mean for that societal change? Is it going to happen through that lens, or other ways are needed to actually view this? So then I also, in addition to the cardiovascular system, I looked for new areas in the RAAS system, because it's huge and complex, where drugs are being developed at the moment to target in order to improve hypertension management, such as angiotensinogen and the alternative or the good part of the RAAS system that is not detrimental but actually protective. And the reason for it was important to look at that alternative RAAS system is because although for many years we know there's this characteristic of hypertension of low renin, what about the new biomarkers? What about the alternative RAAS? How does it present in populations of African ancestry? Is it protective as it should be physiologically, or is there other issues there that we need to look deep into? So then I, just towards the end of my PhD, and then years after that, I worked on the SABA study, which was focused on ambulatory blood pressure and sympathetic nerve activity. And I tried to find some answers to my questions there. And what we did there, the paper was focused on stress. How does this low renin phenotype look under stressful conditions? And in this case, physical stress, where the hand of the participant is put in ice water for some time, and then at the same time you are recording in real time how their blood pressure, heart rate is responding to that activity. So I covered the face of the participant there for ethical reasons, but that participant actually had a huge smile on their face when that was happening, and he was supposed to keep the hand there no matter how cold it was. So that is actually, usually when you talk about stress, we think of mental stress, but physical stress also has an impact. And if I went back to the slavery hypothesis, I'd say, that physical stress of surviving the passage and working there in the plantations and being far away from everyone, to survive that whole thing. So I try to connect and continue to make sense of these stories, some from history and others from science. And we found that although we have this low renin phenotype, when you put someone under stress, the renin responds. And the response of going up, the reactivity, is occurring parallel to the increase in the resistance of the blood vessels to the blood flowing. And that, this was just happening in that minute, in the few minutes, but imagine if you are constantly exposed to stress, either physical, mental, what does that do then to your system and your blood vessels? So that was the first paper from my PhD that we discovered that. And then I continued to interrogate the issue of stress and RAAS, and found that it's not only renin, but aldosterone only is actually associated. So when aldosterone goes up, then the chances of the blood pressure going down at night, as it should, become limited. And then you have a blood pressure that remains high overnight, and that is detrimental to health. Blood pressure needs to go down at night because of the balance that we need to maintain. So we also found that the RAAS system still in the Black South African population was associated with markers of potential cardiac injury. So now we are going deep into the impact on the cardiovascular system. And one of the papers that comes from Dr. Mudiri Mutai, who actually found that there was also a link with intrarenal or mechanisms that are inside the kidney. And from that relationship of the mechanisms in the kidney that handle salt, there is a direct association with vascular health. So it seems very far from each other, but it also reminded us that something that is like an electrical circuit, a sodium channel, so small in the kidney where there's millions, the two kidneys, millions of nephrons, the work that is happening at that level actually affects our blood vessels up to a level that if something goes wrong, they become stiff, there's too much inflammation, then it results in disease. And I think that's why we keep asking these questions to see how even at that very cellular level, you can actually find ways to impact real life from that understanding. So in the PURE study, this study was never published, but it had a huge potential because it was the first from Africa, the first with a huge number of populations of African ancestry. And we found that the low renin phenotype was actually associated with death over time, both due to all-cause and cardiovascular mortality. The limitations was that we did not have aldosterone, which is the main component of the system, but also we couldn't prove that the cardiovascular and all-cause mortality was independent of HIV, which was quite prevalent in the group, and of course the use of antihypertensive medication. So although we didn't go far with that study, there's still hope. The importance of the data was acknowledged with a Platinum Award from the Hypertension and Stroke Conference. And I still believe that we can revisit that question because we know about the kidney, the blood vessels, and the heart. What about life? Does the low renin hypertension have implications for when, whether death will occur prematurely due to that, or if someone will have a healthy, long life? Because that's what, at personal level, was also very important. So then I worked also in the African Predict study, which was designed in a way that those limitations that were identified earlier were sort of mitigated, and we had a healthy population that we could ask the research questions without worrying about what about HIV, what about diabetes, what about medicine. And our first findings were, as we expected, the system was associated with blood pressure. And what was very new was potassium, because all the previous work was talking about salt, sodium, salt, sodium. We were one of the first people to show in our cohort that potassium, which we mainly get from fresh fruits and vegetables, was actually a very important determinant of the low renin phenotype that we talk about. Then we asked ourselves, if we increase potassium intake by saying people that are living in urban areas should have gardens, and instead of eating fast food all the time, they eat fruits and vegetables, will we be able to address this low renin phenotype and the associated health issues? So from there, the work was done mostly by students, which makes me very happy and proud. I was co-supervising this student. It was Prof Karina's student, and what I liked about his project it was that for the first time, now the social determinants of health were coming through, because the results that were significant were only in Black women of low socioeconomic status. And I asked myself, why? Why not in the white women? Why are not in the Black women of high socioeconomic status or the middle ones? Why in those with low socioeconomic status? And how just that can be linked to something that is happening inside the kidney. And I also got an South African Medical Research funding for my first project on those new components of the system. And that work also, what is very important about is that it's now the work that's being carried by the next generation of researchers and not myself. with Puti Mokonyana focusing on the soluble prorenin receptor in relation to kidney function and cardiovascular risk, and Noncedo focusing on angiotensinogen, also with blood pressure. And what we found confirms that indeed the drug development that targets the system, especially angiotensinogen, have potential to improve hypertension treatment in different contexts in the world, and not just only where they were initially tested. And also have other students working in our unit who focus on kidney function and arterial stiffness, making sure that all those questions that previous people did not use, the robust methodologies, the comprehensiveness, we are able to address that question. So hoping that in the future we will have that body of knowledge from the African continent, from South Africa, maybe resulting in a complete shift in how we view hypertension in populations of African ancestry. So then there's one which is something that also relates to my academic story personally, is to that sometimes I ask myself, is it a friend or a foe? And is it good or bad? And the answer is it depends. When I was writing up the recommendations in my thesis, the final chapter of my thesis, and I recommended all the work that I've done and my students are doing, that was very satisfying, because it was not just recommendations sitting there, we are now doing it. But this one challenged me so much, not scientifically only, but also as a person. And that is because when I was, during my PhD years finalizing, ACE2 was the hope. It was the good side of the RAAS system. And we were thinking that maybe there are some aspects in the African populations with the alternative RAAS, especially ACE2, that could explain the low renin phenotype. So maybe we could see some protective effects in our populations. And while I was in the early stages with collaborations doing that, then came COVID-19. And then ACE2 was, the ACE2 receptor was identified as the binding site of the COVID spike protein. And I almost want to say the rest is history because of the arguments that came around again, the RAAS system. People's debates about people having to stop taking ACE inhibitors and that. I got into the middle of that because of writing. Although I was still a early career researcher, I had to write an opinion kind of from our research group. And I had to defend that opinion later on with a lot of intellectual and emotional complications. But at the end, now in 2016, it's such a proud moment to see these two postdoctoral fellows unraveling what ACE2 means in the context of cardiovascular disease, which is supposed to be protective, and also at the intersection of cardiovascular and infectious diseases, which is COVID-19, and what that could mean comprehensively when we look at health and improving health outcomes. So I think at the time of what was happening there, it was also a moment where I stopped to reflect on what am I doing and why am I doing this again? And it was at the right time because I was part of the Future Professors program, and I remember I attended a session where Prof Nkomo said, you do your best work when you connect with your scholarly identity. Focus on research that matter most, not only to you, but to those you study or could benefit from your work. Ask yourself, why is my research important? How can my work make a difference? And I was just like, that is exactly what I wanted to hear. And then I'm going to get out of the kidney, I'm going to get out of African ancestry this and African ancestry that, and I'm going to go out there and solve real problems. Because while I was busy with the kidney and the channels and the low renin, hypertension was growing as a major public health concern. such that in 2022, the World Health Organization put out a report to say it was good news, but then bad news. Because the good news was that in Africa, life expectancy, healthy life expectancy had increased by 10 years. But it was threatened by the alarming increase in hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and other non-communicable diseases. And in the 2023 report, they reiterated that it was causing premature death globally. But what I liked from that report, it was that the prevention and treatment of hypertension is actually not complex. It's very straightforward. And what did we need to do? We needed to do then to address this silent killer, which is now my new mission. I left the kidney for some time because now I'm frustrated that I'm not making impact. I want to make impact. I want to see people lives being changed by my research. So that was my mission in life. And we are at a percentage 24 control, and we need to get at 50%. And to get at that 50%, why do we need to get there? Because we will save 144,000 lives by 2040. And when I looked now at the report, 5 years from, because the 2023 report included 2019 data, when we look at what happened 5 years later from that data, we are only at 25%. So we've only increased control by 1%. And what does it mean for the amount of lives that are going to be lost? Because we are not getting anywhere near that 50% control that will save actual lives. And that's then when I was really focused on making that impact. I started talking more at conferences. I started talking more about people, about hypertension killing people, about hypertension changing people's lives, where breadwinners are lost early due to stroke, due to a heart attack or kidney failure. So with that, I also, last year I was at the National Research Foundation Symposium, and they were asked me to speak about why is hypertension research important to me. I said earlier in 2025, I lost my grandmother and my grandfather a few days apart from, within 1 week, one from a heart attack and one from kidney failure. And my grandmother was on antihypertensive medication for a very long time. And although I was hurt, I felt that I'm glad that he was taking treatment, because she was able to live until she could see her great-grandchildren, she could see me get a PhD. And so I was grateful for the work that was done before to make sure that people get treatment for hypertension. But then this year during May comes this headline that the rising hypertension cases in Gauteng, people younger than 45 years old. And those are breadwinners, they are parents, they are people that families depend on. So if we are not going to achieve control in those young people, what does it mean? Not only in terms of health outcomes, what does it mean in terms of well-being in families and communities? The economy, not only of those families and the communities, but of the country. And even more concerning was that I got interviewed around the same time by a young person who is 24, she has hypertension. And when I was trying to explain to her what I know about hypertension, she stopped me and said, but Prof, hypertension researchers, you always tell us about obesity, eating unhealthy and not being active, and that's why we develop hypertension. And she said, it was a video interview, look at me, I'm lean, I'm active, I used to go hiking, and then one day I woke up in hospital because my blood pressure was going through the roof. So why do I have hypertension if I'm looking like this? And then that made me to think of the work that other people are doing, like Prof Lebo and other groups in the US, where they say the social determinants are the biggest contributing factor. It's not about where your house, but it's about where your house is, the neighborhood, that is going to determine whether you have quality sleep, whether you have high stress levels, and whether that affects your blood pressure. And that is just something that, I mean, where does the kidney fit in here? I'm asking myself. I've been doing all this work all these years. But then I remember, yes, it does fit in because it cannot be the kidney alone, like they said with the slavery hypothesis. Although there might be issues there, other compounding factors will contribute to that, resulting in a risk. And at last year, we had the opportunity to also engage with other young people in Soweto who are in their 20s and they have kidney failure. And their wish, which I was sitting there thinking I'm going to come and talk about my kidney work, and I just sat there touched because their wish, I remember the guy, he said his wish is that someone measured his blood pressure when he was little, because they would have seen that it was very high for a child, and they would have checked his kidneys and they would have found that there's damage there, and not wait for when he has kidney failure and he's just praying for a next match so he can get a new kidney, which at some point he got, and he was able to start a family and get a job, but then it failed and now he had to stop working and hope again for another match. So those are the stories that changed how I think as a researcher and as a person. And in this review that I was invited to submit by the Journal of Human Hypertension, one of the key messages there was about what actions, urgent actions should be taken to save lives. And that, as I said earlier, when I stopped talking so much in conferences about the kidney and the RAAS, but about what is happening in the world right now and what do we need to do. And that then brings in the community engagement aspect of my career, which I've been doing with the team at Heart now 10 years. And while we are doing it, I look at those actions, the contextualized interventions, the improve in hypertension awareness. We've been doing that for 10 years now. What more can we do to save lives, to save young people? And then that screening should be expanded from these communities or the areas that we do to more people, and even better, to young people, because we cannot just assume that young people now, they use the internet, they are so smart, so they understand and they know what's good and bad. We cannot make those assumptions. We need to really go in to try and address these issues at all levels. And I mean, this community engagement, as I said earlier, is that what I was missing for a long time, the human connection. When you work with human data, you know you've collected that data from humans, but most of the time it's just you and the numbers, and the hypotheses, and the conclusions, and the recommendations. But when you go out of the kidney, out of the lab, into the community, and you talk to grandmothers, that not only see you as a researcher, but as their child, that they are so proud of, that you can speak so well about things like the kidney and hypertension, and then you make them understand that, yes, as we are celebrating Valentine's Day, remember you cannot love someone with a heart that is unhealthy. So you need to show that your heart is healthy so you can love your family, your grandchildren for a longer period and have this time with them. And it is there that I started to think of how I ask my research question. Is it my curiosity? Is it my passion? Is it like an electrical circuit? Or is this community engagement a space where now I realize that this is where the questions should come from? And this is where the answers that I have with my research question should come to achieve that societal impact. And that is just a happy place. It's not often where people will talk about being happy at work, but that is a happy place for me to be. And it came through a very complicated way. And I remember one day I was talking to Prof Pietra that, you know, sometimes, especially when I think of my inaugural lecture, coming from that Lorraine phenotype to community engagement. And she said, and the struggles I experienced, she said, Lebo, just think of it as gold that is being developed from raw material, going through different stages, and then the furnace, which I felt in 2020, 2021 with the ACE2 and everything else. Although in the furnace you have heat, very high heat, I felt like that I was not only burning, but I was just seeing dark, lightning, confusion. And then after that, all of a sudden, when I switched from leading with science to leading with my heart, and I spent time with the community, then I started to see clear. I started to see the future and why I'm doing the kind of research that I am now doing. And how do we achieve societal impact from the very lowest level in the kidney, being in the community? And that is why I think my journey is about starting with the low renin phenotype, moving to a public health project and back. Because now I know and I understand that that low-renin phenotype that started with slavery, salt, actually what it means now in the African context should be focused on improving health outcomes. It should focus on precision medicine. That's where we are going now. And that brings me to the appreciation of not of race and not of ethnicity, not focusing on that, but just the genetic diversity that is on the African continent, the environmental factors, the religious, the cultural differences, they're all that makes, what does it mean in terms of hypertension? And then we ask ourselves, this aldosterone and renin we are studying, are we able to implement it into hypertension care? It's being implemented elsewhere in the world, working, but why do we still have a treatment and control problem in South Africa or in Africa if we can use these hormones? What will using these hormones help? Will they reduce kidney disease and heart attacks? And how will it perform compared to where it's been done elsewhere in the world in the context of multimorbidity, HIV, diabetes, and those other contextual factors? And then with that came the COBMA SA study, which first and foremost is in alignment with the National Strategic Plan for the Management of Non-Communicable Diseases. And what that means is that we would like for people who have hypertension, 90% of them to be diagnosed, of the 90, 60 to be treated, and of the 60, 50 to be controlled. That takes us back to that World Health Organization reports that 5 years we've moved only 1%. Now, our national target, our government, we want to have that 50% in that 2022 and 2027 strategic plan. So now, instead of being a spectator and waiting for the period to end and say, but we have a problem of hypertension, we've been proactive with developing this study. And what we will do, we will profile hypertension, and using that care cascade approach, determining the Northwest Province if we are going towards those targets or if we are still far, and what can we do about it. And the communities here are not participants, but they are key stakeholders. They are the owners of the data equally as we are. And what we get from this study is they have a right to it as much as I am, although they will not publish a paper from it, but can it save their lives at some point or the life of their loved one. So this study occurs within other projects that we are involved in, where I'm playing leadership roles, including the Cardiorenal Health Research Initiative, where we believe that we believe in advancing Africa-led science to be able to understand and prevent cardiovascular disease and kidney disease. This is because for a very long time we've been learning from the West, where even my own research work, that's where the origins come from. But now, all these years, what have we learned? What can we do with the knowledge that we have? Can we lead these research questions? And when we lead them, can we be able to really see tangible improvement in lifelong health outcomes? And really, we are not just talking, we are walking the talk. So myself and my colleagues, last year we went to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana, where we had the opportunity not only to speak about science and research and exchange, but we spoke to doctors. We spoke to young people with hypertension who came and asked us questions and are anxious because they are lean. Again, they are not obese, they are lean. They are young and they are trying to live healthy. They know that there's risk in their families, so they were raised in families where they know they must not eat too much salt and all that, but they are hypertensive. And they are anxious because they are worried about their kidneys and their heart, because their blood pressure is not under control. And it's in those conversations that we get more reason to do the work that we are doing. So the future of cardiorenal health in Africa, what it looks like now, is that what is actually urgent, it's not optional. We have to expand the screening of hypertension from selected areas to as much as we can. And we need to expand it to children and youth, because having kidney failure at the age of 30 or 40, it doesn't mean that the issue started then. It means the issue started way early, before pregnancy, maternal health. If the mother is stressed, there's adversity, there's unhealthy diet, all those things. They already put the offspring at risk. So we need to go even further in age to do those screenings. And what we think we should happen, and I believe is doable, when you screen for hypertension, why don't you also do a urine test to screen for what is happening in the kidney? It might initially sound like it's going to be expensive to do, but then later it will be more expensive to rehabilitate a stroke patient or get a kidney transplant. And implement these global initiatives like the STEPS program and the RAAS package, because with that you get support with surveillance, monitoring and evaluation, and also get to build collaborations with others to really see that impact. And we emphasize that if someone is diagnosed, especially if they are young, why don't you measure their renin and aldosterone? And we all, because that can tell you a lot. Then they can be immediately put on medication that will lower their blood pressure, instead of waiting months and years to be diagnosed with resistant hypertension and get many more medications with them they don't adhere to, and the problem don't get solved. But by just simply profiling their hormones from the get-go, you can already make a difference. And equity is very important. And if I think you are in South Africa or in Africa, you know that things in the provinces, and even within the province, the clinics, things are not done the same way. That should change, because it doesn't help to improve hypertension control in this province and the other province is going better. At the end of the day, the whole country suffers. So those wishes that we have, or the recommendations, they are not going to just happen by themselves. And this is more for leadership. The ecosystems that allow this kind of research to actually take place. Because it took, for me, I believe it took way too long to get to where I am with my research, or where we are now. Why did it have to take so long? So there's more need for research ecosystems, not just institutional based, but countrywide or in the region, to foster multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral collaboration and facilitate those equitable partnerships. I hear a lot of multi-sectoral things here and there, but not so much when it comes to health research that actually achieve impact, and that is where we should be going. We need multi-center, multinational studies. We need to share resources, because one researcher, 5 million, one place, is not sustainable. The impact, you find that is very little. But if you have many researchers with that 5 million and different places in the country, you achieve a lot of impact. And capacity building is what we need in Africa, because these biomarkers and other things, sometimes we even send our samples abroad to be analyzed because we don't have the capacity or the systems to do it. That's why we need to build these ecosystems that will facilitate this. And an important question that will always be with me as a basic scientist: do we need new biomarkers? Or can we just focus on what we can afford and do that? Yes, we do. We will always do, because now, as I speak, aldosterone renin is what I'm recommending for my context, for South Africa, for Africa, and other low and middle income countries. But elsewhere, where they are already ahead, they are already saying aldosterone, you can actually have another biomarker that's cheaper, easier to use to measure it. So I think, although it was a challenge for me personally to keep doing that research, it is important, and it will always be, because it will improve risk stratification and precision medicine that is needed to improve hypertension. And as I always think, it's not just about the numbers. When you improve hypertension, you might see from your research lens that you're improving this disease, but on a personal level, you're improving an individual's life, a family's life, a community's life, and the whole country when you address that health issue. And as I was speaking about the ecosystems, and although it took a lot for me to get where I am, I've actually been in those systems that made it possible. From the time, very long time ago, many, many years ago, that I've been here, when I look back, I just want to acknowledge the systems and the people that have made it possible, and my funders and also the university, which not only support me, but they reward me. So in addition to getting that satisfaction from community work, there's also those ecosystems that are needed in South Africa, in Africa, to achieve that research impact. And I would like to also acknowledge my colleagues at Physiology and at Heart, because they have been part of this journey for a very long time. And although we didn't talk about science all the time, we had tea, we did all other things that actually were catalysts to changing how I think and to that personal transformation. And I would like to also acknowledge the students, because with the students, that's where I did most of the community engagement. And when I was a student, I didn't think it is possible to be that passionate as a student about community engagement while you have so many other things going on for you as a student. But that is what I am grateful for these students, because they're not only scientists, but they are people that are in touch with reality, and they are passionate and committed to community engagement. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge my PhD supervisors and mentors, some here today, some are joining online, and yeah, because they've contributed to different aspects of my journey that have enriched my experience and what I am capable of giving to the next generation of researchers. So I'm quite grateful for them. And I acknowledge also my institutional and national collaborators, author, lifestyle diseases, SEN, and the ethics committee. Yes, we learn a lot. That human connection, you get it there from the ethics committee. If you forget, they will remind you that there's humans in your research. And then our international collaborators, some of them, they are my mentees, and it's just been enriching to see how mentorship always shows up and can start like mentorship and then result in something that is very big and impactful. And then, of course, my dear family, my friends, the people that keep me sane when I'm having a conflict between the kidney and public health, then I have a place to go where things make sense, and then I'm able to think about not just research, but humanity. Yes, and what research means for humanity. And I would like to conclude with this dedication to my late aunts and uncles who are no longer with us, because they believed in me. From when I was a little girl, they always told me that you are very smart, you're gonna make it in life, you must study hard. And I didn't think it was important then, but as I grew up and I came to Northwest University, and I could see how my career was going, the trajectory. And today, when I reflect on what it means to be a first graduate in my family, and even better, which is a bonus, to become a full professor, I cannot help but think of what Nelson Mandela said in The Long Walk to Freedom. He said, education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, and that a child of a farm worker can become the president of a great nation. And it is what we make out of what we have and not what we are given that separates one person from another. And with that, I would like to thank you, all of you, for coming this morning.
Prof Lebo, you can just stand here. I'll just hand over the certificate. I just want to say, Prof Avi, colleagues, Prof Lebo, what an insightful and I think well presented inaugural lecture. Congratulations. I think in your inaugural address, you mentioned all the key ingredients of what it takes to be a full professor. I think you said whenever there's a point of complexity, you want to make sense and you want to make impact, and you have the sense of curiosity, but then also I think humanity. So, and I think Prof Lebo, that's why you are so successful. And I also want to say, Prof Avi, congratulations to the faculty for seeing the talent, for nurturing the talent so that the faculty can also flourish. Also, Prof Lebo, congratulations to your family. Your success is also their success. As you said tonight about your family members that are not here anymore, I hope you learn from your mother and that you have also that curiosity. I think it must be difficult to keep up at home with your homework, but good luck with that one. Lebo, while we were speaking outside, I was reminded of a quote by an actress, and that just reminded me of you, so I'm going to read the quote. Sometimes the future changes quickly and completely, and we're left with only the choice of what to do next. And we can choose to be afraid of it, just stand there, trembling, not moving, assuming the worst that can happen. Or we can step forward into the unknown and assume it will be brilliant. So you are an example, I think, in the faculty. And Prof Lebo, I also know with the title of a full professor, and it's the highest academic rank. And it's not often that people achieve that at your age. I mean, often some of the inaugural lectures I attend are people that are close to retirement. So I think you have very more complexities to solve and questions to answer, and I really wish you every success with your future and all the amazing things that await you. Congratulations.
May we all rise for the national anthem before a closing prayer. Unfortunately, I don't know this song. Let us bow our heads and pray. God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, your word tells us in Jeremiah 29, verse 1, that you know the plans you have for us, plans to give us hope and a future. Lord, thank you for the food we are about to receive and for the nourishment of our bodies. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen.